When it was announced that Infinity Ward was going to release a trailer for their newest Call of Duty in 2007, fans of the series were buzzing like a swarm of locusts over the possibilities. However, none of us could have expected what we saw next. The three biggest changes to Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, aside from abandoning its World War II roots, were kill streaks, customization, and perks. So let's start right at the beginning. Players were now rewarded for racking up consecutive kills with an unkillable UAV at 3 kills, allowing you to see your enemies as flashing red dots on your minimap, an airstrike at 5 kills, and an attack helicopter at 7 kills. Since kill streaks would continue to your next kill sequence if you started a new life, many would save their helicopter until they spawned back in so that it would work towards a new streak. These kill streaks were all powerful in their own way, but they weren't unmanageable if you were on the receiving end of their punishment. Either way, it changed how you approached Call of Duty, and it added a layer to it that most of us had never seen before. Infinity Ward also saw fit to give players the ability to level up with experience points, unlockable weapons and perks, and the ability to create a class. All features normally reserved for tactical shooters or RPGs. While these may be the standard now, at the time these features were considered groundbreaking, especially for a console shooter. And if traditionally leveling up wasn't good enough for you, you could always hit the level cap, then Prestige, which wiped out all the stuff you'd unlocked, but gave you a shiny little badge right next to your name. Do this 10 times and you get the infamous Gold Cross, and constant accusations of being a booster. The funny thing is that even though it feels prestigious to unlock a new emblem every time you started the journey over again, the icon and title were purely cosmetic and had no effect on matchmaking whatsoever. Being afraid of someone who had a 10th Prestige was just as silly as writing someone off for never doing it in the first place, and that's still the case to this day. The last edition COD 4 introduced to their little series is arguably the most important and influential. With the inclusion of a system of perks that would give your player certain abilities that would help you out in specific situations, Infinity Ward changed the game from a pure gun versus gun first-person shooter and turned it into more of a dynamic experience. After months of playing, a few classes rose to the top. As far as perks went, any of the blue perks were equally effective. Stopping Power Juggernaut and UAV Jammer ruled the red slot, and Dead Silence was hands down the dominant yellow perk. If you used any combination of these perks, you were set. On the weapons front, the M16 and the AK were the go-to assaults, and the P90, MP5, and 74U provided you with all your submachine gun desires. The M40, R700, and Barrett were all consistent one-shot kill snipers when equipped with stopping power. The R700, however, had more idle sway than the other two, so it was often disregarded, even though it could one-shot a juggy with greater ease than the M40. The LMGs and shotties, although fun as they were completely outclassed by the other weapons and were fairly impractical. The LMGs lost too much mobility and the shotties were too limited. All in all, your best bet was the M16. It was, as many dubbed it, the God gun of Call of Duty 4. It was a shotgun up close, deadly at mid-range, and a sniper at distance. It was the everyman gun, which is why you run into it more than any other gun online. With Call of Duty 4 being such a groundbreaking success, all eyes eventually turned to Treyarch to see how they'd follow it up. Because 2, 3, and 4 were so massively different, we were all wondering what tricks they'd pull out in order to retain the precedent set by Infinity Ward. But I'm not sure anyone expected what they eventually saw. For months leading up to the debut trailer, it had been rumored that Treyarch was once again taking the fight to World War II. To be truthful, this was disappointing news to a lot of us fans. World War II shooters had been done 1,000 times and we were ready for a change. On top of that, no one had a clue if they would stick to the perk system or try and reinvent the wheel once again. When the trailer finally launched, we learned that Call of Duty was in fact going back to the roots of the war to end all wars, and that this time we would see the Pacific struggle as well, and that it was being led by Jack Bauer. Presumably to avoid any further confusion, Call of Duty dropped its sequential numbering and went with the name World at War. If I was skeptical before, that skepticism quickly vanished when I finally saw the game with my own eyes. I was officially excited. When we finally experienced multiplayer, we saw that Treyarch elected to stick to the create a class and kill streak model. World at War was more of an attempt on their end to refine the model rather than reinvent it, and to mold it to their time period. Instead of UAV, you had recon plane. Instead of red dots, you had aperture sights. Instead of the M16, you had the MP40. World at War's rifle class were all semi-automatic save for the STG-44, which was a different name for the MP-44 we had seen in every COD before this. The Gewehr and the M1A1 carbine were probably your best bet. At distance, these guns were lethal in the hands of someone who didn't have to rely on spray and pray. And speaking of which, the submachine guns in World at War were hands down the best in the game. They were so lethal because their rival, the rifle class, was extremely ineffective up close. In fact, they were almost worthless up close. Also, they were lethal because of this. The MP40 was a one-shot headshot with stopping power, and shot for longer than any other submachine gun with a round drum attachment. If you slapped on juggy and steady aim, all you had to do was hold the trigger down long enough, and statistically you were bound to kill something. All the snipers did the exact same amount of damage, with the only differences being the reload time and the rate of fire. The Russian-made semi-automatic PTRS was the clear victor here. None of the others could compete with how fast you could empty your clip. The LMGs and the shotties suffered from the same problems as COD 4 for the same reasons. There was honestly no justifiable reason to use them if you wanted to win. Nazi zombies was also introduced with World at War, and I'm not sure anyone really could have predicted just how much fun and how much of an avid following they'd get. A player could easily obtain 40 hours from a single zombie map and have fun the entire time. In the end, going back to World War II was enough to turn off a lot of Modern Warfare players, who ended up back on COD 4 for another year. At the same time, there was something about it that was just as addicting as fun as COD 4 to many other players. You had never played a World War II shooter like this, and there's something to be said for that. It was an interesting divide, as both camps were equally fanatic about their game. It's hard to argue with the decision to go back to World War II when you look at that. COD 4 had the lasting power to go another year, and World at War was the first time we had seen perks in a World War II shooter. That only meant variety for the players, which is always a good thing. After months of playing, knowing that a new COD game came out every year, the question began brewing, where would the series go next?
Our dogs are at the ready! The dogs hunger for the flesh of our enemies!